Good day. I'm Liesl Pretorius, Freedom of Religion South Africa's head of legal. And joining me today is our executive director, Mr. Michael Swain. Today, we're going to talk about international trends and indeed some disturbing international trends that are eroding the rights of parents to pass on their faith and values to their children. So, as you can imagine, parental rights is a key component of freedom of religion. Freedom of religion really is at the heart of this issue and is under threat wherever parental rights are under threat. So, welcome, Michael. Can you start us off by telling us about a major trend that is emerging and why parents should be concerned about this trend?
Yes, one of the major trends that is emerging, and we've been seeing this for a while now, is where governments and international organizations are increasingly intervening in what children are taught about sex and sexuality. Now, you might think at first glance, well, does that really matter? And the answer is obviously yes, it absolutely matters, because what children are taught about sex and sexuality will fundamentally affect their understanding of how they relate to themselves, how they form relationships, and ultimately how they contribute and even form future societies. So states and organizations that are doing this are actually encroaching and undermining what is rightly parents' prerogative and responsibility, which is to decide which views and values about sex and sexuality to teach their children. And of course, one of the main areas that we're seeing this is in so-called comprehensive sexuality education, or CSE, because in many cases, parents aren't even aware of the content. Now, to give you an example of this, in October 2022, South Africa, along with 9 other African nations, literally handed over the authority to the United Nations to implement what is seen by many to be a radical and very liberal secular sexuality education curriculum, which they're developing for public schools. And of course, that marginalizes or effectively excludes the views of other religious or cultural or secular types of organizations on this subject. And again, these curriculums, these contents are pushed very, very strongly by major organizations like the World Health Organization, WHO, or UNESCO. And in many cases, the materials that they produce contain very sexually explicit and what many would see as very age inappropriate content, which is often delivered under the guise of empowerment. And it all does not require the express consent of parents. So essentially, what parents would want to teach their children is in many cases being subverted. And the other concerning trend we're seeing is, of course, this promotion of transgender ideology into schools. Now, let me say this, it has long been true that a tiny minority of children do suffer from gender confusion and believe that they're born in the wrong body, that used to be known as gender dysphoria. And of course, these children need to be careful, they need to be protected from any form of bullying or persecution, they need to be looked after. But that is very different from actually pushing the belief mainstream that sex and gender expression are a choice. It's a social construct, so to speak, and that there is no such thing as the biological binary of men and women.
Yes, ma'am, that is a major trend that we are seeing internationally, and these trends they often are a clear indication of what we can expect is coming our way in South Africa, because we are not isolated, especially when these international trends, how they play out in practice in their real lives, real people. Could you give us some examples of this, Michael, of these trends that overseas that give us an indication or give us an idea of what we are to expect in South Africa if this takes hold in South Africa?
Yes, look, these are obviously international examples, they're not South African examples, but ideas have consequences, and you can see ideas played out literally in real time. So in Colorado, in the USA, at the moment, some families are suing the Jefferson County Public Schools for undermining parental rights. What happened in this instance was that the school failed to inform parents that their policy of assigning students to their accommodation would be based on their gender identity rather than biological sex. And of course, one family was very concerned when they uncovered that their 11-year-old daughter in an all-girls dormitory was assigned to actually share a bed with a boy who identified as a girl during a school trip. In another instance, another family discovered that their 11-year-old son, who was sent on an all-boys camping trip, had an 18-year-old counselor who described herself as non-binary and was actually a female and was responsible for supervising the boys' showers. And when the parents objected, the school doubled down and they stated that they will continue to base room assignments and other such things on gender identity, and they will not provide separate accommodation for students, even those who are made uncomfortable by these rules, and even if it violates their religious beliefs against staying in close quarters with members of the opposite sex. So these are very concerning things. Let me give you another example, which is a slightly different one. This is a case in Oregon where a woman who wanted to adopt 2 young children, she had to go through a state certification program and was told during that program that she must agree that all foster and adoptive parents had to affirm a child who might in the future express a gender identity at odds with their biological sex. And the woman explained to government officials that although she was obviously well qualified to be a parent in every other respect, this training contradicted with her traditional Christian beliefs, and she was then told that she was ineligible to adopt. So again, ideas have consequences. Once these start to get into mainstream, then obviously they start to have societal impacts.
Yes, absolutely. You gave us a few examples now, Michael, of incidents that all from the United States. Are there other examples from outside the USA where this ideology is undermining the rights of parents or even the right to be a parent?
Absolutely. I mean, we're also seeing this in Europe. So, states are increasingly encroaching on this sacred parent-child bond. In Austria, for example, a primary school teacher exposed young students to graphic sexual content and instructed them to keep it secret from their parents. You're just seeing this, if you like, intervention between the school system and teachers, particularly in some instances, and their parents. In Switzerland, the state removed a teenage girl from her parents because they refused to endorse gender ideology. And they even threatened them with criminal charges unless they complied with a court order so that this young girl could legally change her gender. Another instance is in Ireland, where a Christian teacher has literally spent nearly 400 days in prison because he refused to use a student's preferred pronouns. And he basically said that he was unable to do so because of his religious beliefs and principles. And we believe that for all these reasons, 4SA is placing a very high emphasis on parental rights at the forefront of our defense to the right to religious freedom. Because if parents are prevented from passing on their faith and their values to their children, it will literally have a massive impact on the future of our societies, because these children, with whatever views and values that they may have embedded in them, they will be ruling the world in 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time. And so we need to be aware, and very keenly aware, when any form of indoctrination takes the place of education in our public school systems.
Yes, I can't help but think back to this example, Michael, of the woman in Oregon who's not allowed to adopt unless she agrees that she will affirm any child who is gender dysphoric. Um, because there's medical research. So this is medical research, not opinion, medical research that says that most children who have gender dysphoria will not be gender dysphoric off by the time they reach adulthood. So if a requirement that requires adoptive parents, prospective adoptive parents, to kind of blindly affirm a child, even while the evidence shows that most children will not continue to be gender dysphoric, that it will be transient, it won't be permanent, that could have major harmful consequences for a child. And I think that's why, things like that, prescribing that you have to affirm or you have to do this, instead of as the parent who loves and cares for a child, act in your specific child's best interest, and that's your decision. not the state's decision. That's your decision. You should know basis parent. That's so critically important. You can't kind of legislate that away from people. It's not in the best interest of children. And it's definitely a violation of parental rights. But I think that brings us, Michael, to the next question, and that is, what do you believe is the underlying trend that creates these conflicts? Because these are serious conflicts, and at the end, it's the children who get hurt. Surely parents are in best position to know what is in the best interest of their children, and not the state.
That's 100% correct. The best and perhaps the only way, we believe, to see the rights of children is to see them nested underneath parental rights, because, as you say, parents know what is best for their children. And it is also settled law that parents are the guardians, the caretakers, the protectors, and the providers and the educators of their own children. The family is the basic building block of society because it is the first place where children learn how to navigate the world. It's their preparation for their future. So the role of parents is crucial. And the state, in law, actually has a duty to uphold parental rights and to support the family structure. The only time the state is supposed to intervene is in the most exceptional circumstances. For example, if there's abuse or serious neglect, and even then, it should be with a view to restoring the family relationship. So what is concerning is to see the influence of the prevailing secular ideology, which sees everything through this lens of the oppressor and the oppressed. This actually, interestingly enough, is a morphing of the Marxist ideology of the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the haves and the have-nots. And what it does is it sets up an irreconcilable conflict. And this can be seen playing out in real time in the so-called intersectional hierarchy, where increasingly and unfortunately, your value seems to be determined by your level of victimization. You can see examples of this in the whole male patriarchy arguments and the racial dynamic arguments. And it is particularly evident in the role of sex and sexual orientation as primary factors of a person's identification. And this is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, because this is the very dynamic that is being used by the Department of Basic Education to justify teaching teachers or training teachers to push transgender ideology into pre-primary and primary schools. We received a letter from them written to the Coalition of Religious Leaders who objected, of course, to this teacher training. And the DBE stated that parents and children are in an unequal power relationship. And as a consequence, they believe, the DBE, that they are entitled to step in on behalf of the young learners and to supplement whatever parents are teaching their children with what they call constitutional principles. So again, you see this, the children are now the oppressed and the parents are somehow the oppressor. I mean, this is obviously patent nonsense, but it is part of this whole ideological mix that is increasingly, I would say, contaminating the way that the state sometimes sees this relationship between parents and their own children.
Yes, when I read about the parental rights and values being supplemented by constitutional principles, and I thought for myself, I thought by myself, but unity and diversity and respecting freedom of religion and parental rights is also a constitutional principle. So please do respect constitutional principles, but respect all of them in the right, proper constitutional order, and not just some and undermine others. Michael, so we spoke about international trends and we see it's happening in the US, it's happening in Europe. Should South African parents be concerned? Are we seeing this type of thing happening in South Africa? You spoke about the EC toolkit. What's happening on home ground?
Yes, I mean, South Africa is not immune. I mean, we haven't had the types of cases that we've seen internationally, but of course, this ideology, this transgender ideology, is being introduced right now. It's happening in our schools through what is called the Early Childhood Education Toolkit. Now, this program, which trains teachers, as I said, has been developed by the Social Equity and Inclusion in Education unit set up within the Department of Basic Education. It's funded internationally by a Belgium-based organization called VBOB. And it trains teachers to introduce this transgender ideology in early childhood development centers and to young pre-primary and primary school children. And nowhere is parental knowledge or consent required? So effectively, parents are stripped away from their rights and children are being indoctrinated, almost certainly in many cases against their will. Now, we 4SA have been obviously pushing back against this, and we've been working with a major coalition of religious and faith leaders, including from the Christian faith, the Islamic faith, traditional African spirituality faiths, representing literally over 20 million people from the faith communities. The good news is that our efforts are gaining some fruit and results. We now have a confirmation of a meeting with the new Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Garube, to discuss our concerns about this program and also other protocols, guidelines, and advisory documents that push a particular liberal viewpoint of sex and sexuality into the public school system. Now, this meeting is clearly necessary, given, of course, that the DBE has written in the letter that we've just mentioned to say that they will continue, will was in capital letters, continue to implement this teacher training program. And we are obviously going to be equally firm to say that is not your role. That is the role of parents, and you need to respect, at the very least, you need to consult parents through the relevant structures, the school governing bodies, etc., and to put these materials out so that people can actually see what's happening, so that they can make their voice heard and know what is going to be taught to their children. And if they don't like it, to then have the right, of course, to withdraw their children from it.
Yes, absolutely. I think apart from the one-sidedness of the content, that it marginalizes and excludes religious, the values and the beliefs of religious and cultural communities. So it's the lack of public participation, meaningful public participation in many of these documents coming through the Department of Basic Education. So we are really hopeful that this is an issue that we can discuss with the new minister, so that there is more meaningful public participation, because the department's own white paper on education and training, which recognizes parents' inalienable right to raise their own children according, to your own beliefs and your values, and choose the religious and cultural basis of your child's education, especially in the early years. Also recognizes parents' right to be consulted concerning the type of education their children receive. And many of these documents, parents simply are not consulted. The documents are developed, they're implemented, they're rolled out. And many parents become aware when stakeholders such as ourselves raise the alarm. So that's very concerning. If you are a parent, if you're a member of the public concerned about this, you want to know what you can do to add your voice, if you want to object, we want to encourage you to do so. We do need to act now. We cannot rest idly. We have to act to preserve parents' ability, their right, and the responsibility to uphold the best interests of their children. So important to preserve parental rights, because it's children's rights, it's children's best interests is protected by parental rights. And we want to encourage you that your voice is crucial. We urge every concerned parent, grandparent, teacher, citizen, member of a religious or cultural community, take 2 minutes to submit an objection or a comment on the ECE toolkit. It will only take 2 minutes. Join your voice to the coalitions and ask with us that the rollout of this training is held over immediately. There's an immediate moratorium. We're also calling for the establishment of family values and parental rights unit within the DBE. The purpose of this unit will be to ensure true inclusivity, to protect diversity, and diversity of values and viewpoints in our education system because we have a diversity of families in South Africa, and a constitutional principle is unity and diversity. And we are not seeing that diversity protected through documents such as the ECE toolkit. So please support this initiative. Your support is vital, because it will help stop unwarranted state intervention in family life. And together we can stand strong and safeguard our families and ultimately our children's future. If you're wondering how you can do this, it's very easy. You simply visit our website. The address is www.4sa.org.za. And at the top of the homepage, you'll see a banner image concerning the ECE toolkit, Early Childhood Education Toolkit, and then you can click on a link. There's a button that says "Have Your Say," and then you can submit your comments. It'll take about 2 minutes. And you can also learn more. There's also a button you can click that says "Learn more info." You can learn more about the ECE toolkit, etc. We hope and trust that this conversation was useful to you. And we ask you to support 4SA. Also, when you're on our website, subscribe to our newsletter. Our contact details are there. Follow us on social media, Facebook and YouTube. And please consider donating to us. We are 100% donation funded. So without your support, we can't continue doing this work. We need your support to be able to stand up for faith and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Liesl. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Please continue to watch these videos because we try to produce one every week, and we trust that you find these informative. So again, all of these things can be found on our YouTube channel, and you can click that important Donate Now button to support us in the work that we do. Thank you.
Good day. This is Nobukosi Zulu, legal advisor at 4SA. Remember to like and share this video and then click on the subscribe button to make sure you never miss our video updates on vital religious freedom issues.